we're chopping rails and everybody's drinking to stay in, and th're going, how do you not drink? Well, it's willpower. You know, you really, it's something you got to believe in. And trust me, if you really focus on it, all you guys could do it. And I'm just, this is
just totally blind to what
and
was,
this is why I don't even trust myself to get back into this, because that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane. But that's where my head is if I start to do that,
Wow. Now, how long ago was this that you had that moment of clarity?
Well, I had kind of quit drinking when I was a kid, and then went years without it, and then back into different kind of drugs.
So when was that? When did you get back into the drugs?
I got off of it, and most of these things kind of roll in and out. But about 13 years ago, I'm not a chip guy,
All right.
So then, but at that point, I met a great guy who went over some of the things of why, and kicking was, being dope sick is the worst thing in the world. And I didn't think, I was going to come out of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I look back on it, I probably even should have had some medical things. So I had, this was in a stupid place for a while.
Yeah.
And so when I came up and out of this, and I've been clean all this time, it's I don't want to say I was taking it for granted, but I guess I just felt like I had this thing behind me until this pain came up. And now, what happens? Like you said, what happens if I'm in a car accident? What happens if I get my toe chopped off?
And, without a medical alert bracelet, if you're in a car wreck and you're bad off enough, they'll give you the morphine before you even are aware of what's going on.
But even then, at that point, are they even going to believe the medical alert bracelet?
I don't know.
It's
a tough one. This is one of those things that just it never comes up.
Well, this is the weird thing. I'm trying to explain to these people, I can't have morphine, dude.
Right.
And if I said to them I can't have a peanut, they would get it. You know what I mean? They would get that allergy. I'm allergic to this, obviously. I'm allergic to drugs and alcohol. I shouldn't be around it.
We in the medical profession are, they had a couple of things they could have used on you, by the way. There's a stuff called Toradol, which is an injectable anti-inflammatory medication that may have given you some relief with no narcotic overtones.
I think I did have some anti-inflammatory things, but I don't know the name of it.
Yeah. And the other thing is we're working on a type of medication called N-type calcium channel blockers, and it comes from a cone snail that lives in the deep sea. And for some reason, this stuff stops pain signals from going into the brain. And it's not narcotic, works on a completely different pathway. And this is truly non-addictive, unlike how they used to say, well, we got this new stuff, heroin. It's a non-addictive version of morphine. This stuff is truly non-addictive. The only problem with it is right now, the only way that you can take it is through a spinal tap. They have to stick a needle in your spine and inject it. So it's pretty far away from being in general use. But when we have that, we can maybe get away from this and get some of the street drugs, which are now all prescription drugs.
Right.
And if they're not stolen from the pharmacy, all the OxyContin that's on the street right now is written for somebody by a doctor.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the weird thing. I think the difference between my generation and the kids now is that we knew it was dope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we went out and got our dope, and it was great. We had fun. And these other kids, since they're getting it because the school thinks they need it and this and that, I don't think they know they're doing drugs at all. I think they're all just think they're taking medicine.
Yeah.
And what is that whole purpose of, Adderall and all that kind of shit for kids?
Well, the thing with Adderall and Vyvanse and all those stimulants, the theory behind it is that it helps the kids to focus, because when you've got ADD, their big problem is they can't focus. And they're just, they're looking out the window, they're looking up, they're singing, they're talking to their friends, they're doing this, and their academics are suffering. I had ADD, and I would get 99th percentile on this stupid Iowa Basics. You remember that test? And then I'd be getting C's and D's in school. It was ridiculous. And I drove my parents crazy. If they had known about Adderall back then, I'll guarantee you I would have been on Adderall. And the medications actually do help the kids to focus. I mean, I only did speed one time in my life, and it was during a clinical trial. And they gave you speed, and they gave you thyroid releasing hormone, and they gave you saline, and you never knew which one was which. Well, I knew exactly which one was which. It was a joke. And when they gave me the speed, I could list 12 digits backwards when they read them to me. I mean, it was incredible the amount of focus that you could have on that stuff. And when they found those sorts of effects, then they thought, well, this might be a good thing for kids to have. And, I think it's overdiagnosed and it's overprescribed. I do think that there's a place for it, though. If you've got a kid who's suffering academically, you give them the medicine, all of a sudden they're making A's and B's,
But what's that give us? What is the purpose? You're on speed, you can get A's and B's.
Yeah.
How's that a positive?
Well,
I mean, I obviously have ADD, but I've found a job where, read stuff, go to the phones, talk to people, So I don't understand what good an A is if you got your kid on dope.
Yeah. The theory is they don't have to stay on it forever, that they eventually, it becomes
go on
a
to
learned
other
behavior.
drugs.
Maybe so.
I mean, seriously,
that's a great question.
If you talk to college kids, they trade these things back and forth.
Yeah.
They snort them, and it's become a party thing. The whole thing about you saying they don't have to be on it forever. Again, go back to my thing.
Yeah.
Maybe now I don't want to go off it.
Yeah.
Now, the real thing, I think, at the back of my mind is, particularly when I went into that morphine drip, and I don't know whether you've ever had that before, morphine or heroin or, you get this feeling that's just, as a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody the other day and they said it felt like being in a heat lamp. It was actually Rosie Perez who went through the same thing with her neck.
Wow.
For me, I always thought of it as like just feeling like your bones are cut and there's a warm thing. But in the back of my mind, I think that's the way I think life should feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At that point, life should really be that comfortable. And it almost is like a feeling that maybe we confuse with a spiritual feeling. I don't know that we call alcohol spirits, at some point in our past, we thought that was the spirit life.
Yeah.
But there is a feeling there that I think if I had to say it, what should life feel like, that would be it.
Yeah.
Now,
and what you describe when you're in the body language, nobody could see that, but you kind of hugged yourself and you talk about being warm. I mean, that's a back to the womb thing.
Yeah, it's a womb thing.
About that.
Yeah.
We're always seeking that, I think.
Well, I get that completely. And what I don't understand is when everyone else goes, what? Yeah. What are you talking about? We'll just sit here and we'll smoke the same cigarette for 3 days. We just keep falling back and forth. Yeah. And I get it that it's insanity. But if I really had to, swear on a Bible, I think that feeling is.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is it doesn't stay there. You know what I mean? It turns into all the nightmare stuff, and I've never ran into anybody who did any of the kind of stuff that I did for any period of time who doesn't have the worst possible stories. I think that's why meetings work.
Yeah.
Do
you go to meetings? Are you a meeting guy?
I'm not a joiner to really anything, but those were the people that helped me. But when I go back, I will tell you the truth. The funniest thing about going to meetings at first, and the most humbling thing, was to find out how far from unique I am. And I know some people like, oh, it's great, they're just like me. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I thought I had this poetic story. I thought I was Bukowski.
Yeah.
I thought I was a Tom Waits song.
Yeah.
And here's this housewife and this 14-year-old kid who do the same shit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, God.
Yeah. I can only relate in the sense that I thought I invented masturbation when I was 12. So I think
the way you do it is a little different than anyone else. I'll give you that. No one else puts their feet up on the wall like that. That's different.
Oh boy. Let me. I just want to ask you a couple more questions, and I just
And
want
then
to say
you'll let
this.
me go, officer?
Yeah, no, I want to let you go. They're telling us you have to go. No, hey, E-Rock, I would take some calls. We've got a completely full phone bank, except none of them say what the caller wants or who they are or anything. It's just got their phone numbers. So I'm just throwing that out there for the control room. And all the people who are on hold, sorry, I see one that's been on hold for at least 15 minutes, and I can't go to you till I mean, we could just take random calls and see what happens.
Doesn't matter either way. But, the one thing I was thinking about this, too, with your work, Warren Zevon, I don't know whether you're real familiar with him and his music and all, but he was a guy who stayed straight for a lot of years. And when he found out, he had a terminal case, he was like, good, let's do this. You know what I mean? And that really broke a lot of other people's spirits, you know?
Yeah.
And who's to say? I mean, maybe.
Well, at that point.
But also at that point, I always have that worry that I'm going to go out a junkie.
Dopehead.
Yeah. Instead of, knowing where I'm going or knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Just sliding down it.
So if you had a terminal illness, you're still going to...
Oh, I would never...
Never gonna do it again.
I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to leave here and not go out and cop. I'm not going to play that game ever in my life. I mean, I don't judge anybody for anything. But I think I brought up the thing of Warren is that's what can happen, And I think the weird thing about it is that's the stuff that... And I mean, there's very few... do you consider disease alcoholism an addiction?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm in that camp. I mean, it's certainly... There's a lot of choices that are made, but the withdrawal syndrome that's very real and very physical, to me, puts it in the classification of a disease. And on top of that, there's genetic evidence that it's passed down from generation to generation, through DNA. How ribonucleic acid codes for proteins that somehow make you crave alcohol after you've tried it once, I don't know, but it certainly seems to be the case.
I think the thing about it, though, is like I can't think of like another disease that goes out and hurts the other people that you love. And I guess it does. I mean, I guess everybody feels bad when somebody gets something. But that's the part of it, too, that keeps to me. And I say that because a lot of those people I told you I grew up with are gone.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are... in a place that they don't care whether or not when they go or when not. And some of those people, I guess I feel a certain even responsibility for, being part of it with. But it's amazing. It's amazing how many people that you can hurt when you don't keep an eye on it.
Well, and you had a family.
But, and yes.
That went on this roller coaster with you too, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And they had to, absolutely. And not all that pain that you cause are you even aware of. So when you go off of it, you're like, hey, look, I did it,
Yeah.
But in the meantime,
look at me.
You've burnt down all these other things, and then you make the announcement, great news, everyone, I stopped burning up shit, Let's have a parade for me. Look, I got another chip for not burning down stuff. So it's
Yeah. Well, that's step 9 of the 12 steps. It's make direct amends, except when to do so would cause greater harm.
Right.
And that's got to be. I mean, a really tough thing is to make that inventory of yourself and come up with and see the harm that you have done to the people around you. Now, if people out there have somebody that